AAAS annual meeting SciMic stage, supported by the George Washington University, being presented in person and streaming online. Hi, Mom. I told her I would say that. She should be texting me here soon about that. But I am your host, Jessica Hubbard. Typically, I am the social media strategist at Science Magazine, but this weekend, I am bringing you a lineup of interviews with folks here in Phoenix talking about their research and their work. So let's jump right in with today's first interview with Jola Ajibade, climate justice scholar and Emory Associate Professor. Welcome to the SciMic stage.
Thank you so much.
I want to start with what I consider to be an easy question, but tell me a little bit about yourself.
As you mentioned, I'm an associate professor at Emory, but I do consider myself as an urban political ecologist. And what that means in the context of climate change is that I do study the impact of climate change on communities, on cities, on nations, and the actions we're taking. So that's on one hand. But on the other end, I also explore what are the impact of climate solutions on people. So who benefit from the solutions that we implement and who is disproportionately affected by those solutions. And what do I mean by climate solutions, right? So climate solutions could include a slew of adaptation strategies, plans, and policies. And that could also be migration. It could be disaster risk reduction strategies. So that's one. I also explore climate mitigation solutions, so whether it's solar panels, wind turbines, hydrogen, where these projects are implemented, who is implementing them, who is getting paid from this project, and which communities are affected, particularly by the critical minerals that go into the production of these projects. Also, who is getting the benefits of having solar panels on their home or having wind turbines or even where those hydrogens are being implemented. And then on the other side also is resilient projects, right? So we cannot talk about climate adaptation and mitigation without thinking about sustainability issues or resilience issues. And so in the intersection of resilience and sustainability, I've studied research or I've done research where I explore where levees are being implemented, where dikes, but also where mega cities has been built, right? Floating cities, so I do a lot of work on floating cities, who is building the cities, where they are constructing them, and whether the cities are displacing people. So some of the places where I've worked, those floating cities have led to what you call climate gentrification, so people have been gentrified. It's led to uneven development as well, and it's also created opportunity for a few wealthy people to accumulate resources for themselves, more money, more capital, while low-income communities are being displaced. So at the center of my work is giving a voice, but also bringing to the attention of everyone the impact of a slew of climate solutions, the impact of those solutions on low-income communities, on Black communities, on indigenous communities, on Latino communities as well. And I also center a care-based approach. How do we do these types of work where we truly care for people, where we're also thinking about a decolonial approach to how we're implementing climate solutions, and where we center justice in the ways in which we implement the solutions and which solutions really work. So those are some of the things that I look at. And if you don't mind, I'll add one more thing.
No problem at all.
Apart from just understanding the impact and the disproportionate benefits and drawbacks of climate solution, I also think about the values of these solutions, right? How do different climate solutions change the way we value people or value the land or value ecosystems? And what does this mean for the institutions that we've created, right, to help advance a particular set of vision? So if you're implementing solar, who are you valuing and what are you valuing, right? How does it benefit different people? Which institutions do we need to put in place to make sure that we are doing this in a more equitable fashion? So I'm thinking about values, I'm thinking about how the solutions themselves are shifting and changing society, but also how different institutions are engaging in the implementation of these solutions.
And you'll be, and I'm sure you've touched upon this, but you'll be diving into this more within your session later today, correct?
So my session is tomorrow. And
tomorrow,
yes. And for my session, I will be talking, quite frankly, about colonial legacies and the climate crisis, but focusing more on the restriction of mobility choices for people. So in pre-colonial era, people could move and adapt, and also they have seasonal migration patterns that allows them to be able to deal with different weather experiences, whether it's drought or flood. But in current era, and I don't know that we have any new world era. I think the current world era is chartered. So, but what I see in my work is that people's mobility choices, whether it's climate-related mobility or labor-related mobility or even educational mobility, is shrinking. And so what I'll be focusing on is what does that mean if people have fewer choices to be able to move, especially when they're experiencing different impacts of climate change in their own countries or in their neighborhood or in their communities. What other choices do they have to adapt to climate change if they cannot move because of multiple restrictions and because of these very colonial structures of borders and bordering? So that's what I'll be talking about tomorrow.
I know you've discussed a lot of different mechanisms of your work, but what do you find motivates you to do this?
Thank you. I think there are so many things that motivate me to do this. I'm excited, and I do feel privileged that I've had the educations that I've had to be able to understand and to look at the world from a very systemic perspective and to see the trajectory of society, how it's evolved, if you can think even 500 years back and where we are, and to be a small, tiny part of that group of people thinking about solutions, thinking about how we can make the world a more equitable and a more just place. I think that excites me. And I'm also excited that I don't do this alone. I get to work with different folks from natural sciences to humanities, students, community members. And because I work in different cities, so I work in Lagos, Manila, Tokyo, Portland, I also get to engage a lot with governments and different agencies that are government agencies. So having the opportunity to engage with different interdisciplinary groups, but also different agencies, and to also shape the next generation of teachers and thinkers in this field is really a privilege. And those are the things that excite me.
It sounds like such interdisciplinary work, which is on theme with Science at Scale for this annual meeting. And you mentioned working with so many different folks and inspiring the next generation. What role has mentorship played in your field, or maybe just for you personally?
Oh, wow, that's a good question. I think mentorship has been very transformative for me. And what I mean by transformative is my own PhD supervisor, Gordon McBain, Canadian. I did my PhD in Canada, Western University. He was one of the scientists that got the Nobel laureate along with Al Gore, if some of you remember, in 2007. And even though he was a physical scientist, he was very much interested in policy, very much interested in geopolitics. And he would always just encourage me in whatever direction I was going with my research. And I found his encouragement, his teaching, his mentorship to be really just a radical shift in a positive light for me. And that is in part why I'm here today. But I've also had mentors who are peer mentors, right? People I work together, we do different research together, I'm learning from them. And I also learn from young people as well, people that I mentor, I'm learning different strategies. And so that interrelationship between people who are senior mentors and peer mentors and the people I mentor has been just really life-changing in many ways for me. And I would encourage people to seek out mentors if you don't have one. It can make a huge difference in your career and even in your personal life.
So on the theme of advice, I know we have a lot of students who are attending this annual meeting. What advice would you have to someone who is looking to do similar work?
Okay, someone who may be interested in being an urban or a political ecologist like me and a climate justice, climate scholar, climate activist, I think one of the key attributes that has been helpful in my work, in my career, is number one, being humble and open-minded, acknowledging that there's so much you don't know in all fields. Quite frankly, even if you're a natural scientist or a social scientist, there's so much you need to learn about how the world works. and who controls the world and what controls it, and resource, and power dynamics and history. And so being very open-minded, committing to learning and to reading and to engaging with people and with community, listening to communities, I think makes a huge difference. A lot in my research, there's so many things I learned from just sitting and talking to people and listening to their own side and their experiences with climate change, but also their visions for solutions that they want to implement. Those are the things that I think is helpful, but a commitment to self-improvement, I think, is also important, consistently knowing that, you have to keep engaging and reading and studying and working with people and improving yourself as you move along.
I really like the idea of having an open mind. Like curiosity was a theme that kept coming up in interviews yesterday when we started the expo. Not to shift gears too much, but as we are coming to the end of the interview, and I'm asking this of all interviewees, what are you reading right now?
So I'm reading, and many of you may already know this book, but I'm reading A People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn, just because it's, and I encourage people to check it out, particularly if you're curious about how colonial structures have shaped America and why we're where we are today. That book just gives you really just a robust understanding of how we got here. So that's a book that I would recommend. I'm also like self-help books. So I'm also reading Atomic Habits by James Clear, just thinking about how I can continue to improve myself professionally and personally. And there's one more book on my table, which I haven't got into, but I'm getting into it with my students. And What If We Get This Right? So by Ayanna Johnson. So that's another book that is on my table to read.
My reading list after this conference is going to be so long.
Yes.
I'm very excited about it.
Sure.
Any final thoughts for listeners here at the SciMike stage or listening online?
So for those who are here and those listening online, what I'm going to share is that in a lot of the work that I do, I center decoloniality and justice and just very much relational approach to how I do my work. And we're at a point in America and perhaps in the world where there's so much chaos, so much worry, so much fear, not just about climate change, but also about geopolitics, about the direction of the world. And I think we need to come back to and center one another. We need to begin to rethink ways in which we can listen to one another and care for one another and find ways to also get our leaders to truly care about people. And that is not a solution to what we're going through. I know there's a lot going on, but I think that's a beginning to begin to just have this dialogue and conversation on how can we truly begin to address the multiple cascading challenges that we're facing in this modern era.
I really appreciate your advice, and I appreciate you joining me on the SciMike stage this morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, too. Thank you.